often you could bring the structure, insidious, microbiotic, and the illnesses of the female and male urinary system. It consists of 4 things: urethritis, cystitis, proctitis, and pilopinitis. Protonitis mostly attacks the males due to the fact you want to take the prostate. Pinopinitis, can't say it right. Pilopinitis mostly attacks the female and usually causes by pregnancy, unable to urinate, causes hematuria, irritable bowel syndrome, and painful urination. Ehrlichitis is the most common one, and the bacteria that's included in it is E. coli, chlamydia, trichomoniasis, mycoplasma. The treatments that are used for this infections are Diamide, doxycycline, erythromycin, cetirizine, penicillin, erythromycin, and tetracycline. That's it.
So contact diseases aren't always caused through sexual contact. They can also be caused just through skin contact. And our skin is the first line of defense against many types of bacteria. It is traditionally thought that when your skin breaks and bacteria enters, that it's white blood cells that do all the work against fighting those bacteria. But it's recently been found out that actually your fat cells, your adipocytes, actually produce an antimicrobial peptide, which also helps to fend off bacteria. Most of the skin infections that you'll get will either be indigenous, which means they're naturally occurring or already in your body, or exogenous, which means they come from an external site outside your body. One of the most common skin inflammatory diseases is actually acne. It affects 17 million people, including my middle school self. And it's caused by Proponium bacterium acnes, which is a gram-positive, aerotolerant, anaerobic bacteria. It lives in the sebaceous glands of normal, healthy adults. However, in puberty, when your hormones are racing, your sebaceous glands tend to hyperproduce oil, and so the mix of the bacteria and the oil is what causes acne. There's also skin wounds that you can get during a surgery that will introduce bacteria into your body. These are called SSI, or surgical site infections, and they usually occur approximately 30 days after your surgery. Their chances of getting them are about 1 in 3%, and there's 3 levels of SSIs. You can get just a superficial SSI, a deep SSI, which the infection is going to show up in the muscle, or an organ SSI. The bacteria that is passed and causes these infections usually comes from surgical tools. It'll come from the caregiver, from microorganisms in the air, or just microorganisms already present in your body. One of the most common exogenous bacteria that's often acquired in hospitals is Staphylococcus aureus, and this will cause boils, carbuncles, scalded skin, and toxic shock syndrome. One last way that we can get infections through contact is through bites. Animal bites and scratches are big causes. They're very dirty. And one of the common bites that most people get, in fact 10 to 20% of animal bites, are actually caused from cats, mainly affecting females and usually through handling. It's not as damaging as a dog. However, cat bites become infected. About 20 to 80% of cat bites will be infected, and this is just due to a mix of aerobes and anaerobes that are in the cat's mouth, typically strep and staph species of bacteria. Do you guys have any questions?
Why do women have a higher risk for a urinary tract infection in comparison to men?
Shorter urethra, the women have shorter urethras, and also the men have prostates, and which produces zinc. Zinc is contaminated E. coli, which is the main factor in UTI.
Can an STD caused by a virus be treated by an antibiotic? The answer to that question is no. Most often, the sexually transmitted diseases that are caused by bacteria are the ones that are treated with antibiotics.
Thank you.
Moving on.
Okay, so our group there is going to talk about viruses. Viruses are non-living, acellular, intracellular parasites, which means they don't have a cell structure or any organelles. They can generate energy, and they have to infect and take over a host cell or microorganism in order to replicate. Viruses are the most abundant co-terrestrial organisms. They exist in all kinds of environments, and they play a critical role in recycling carbon. So just a little history. Viruses were first discovered in plants. The virus was the tobacco mosaic virus. A little bit later, foot and mouth disease in animals were caused by viruses, and then that's when the scientists discovered that viruses can be transmitted among plants and animals. A little bit later, in 1901, yellow fever was linked with the virus, and thus viruses were associated with human disease. In 1915, bacteriophages were discovered. Bacteriophages are viruses that infect and kill bacteria. Later in the 1930s, viruses were able to be cultivated in fertilized chicken eggs. And in the 1940s, the electron microscope was invented, so we were able to see viruses. The cultivation and vaccine production of poliovirus was discovered. So virus has three main structures. The first one is the nucleic acid, which is either DNA or RNA, it's not both. It's either single or double-stranded, and it contains all of the genetic material that will affect the whole cell. The second part is the protein coat. It's called the capsid. It gives the virus its shape and symmetry and protection from temperature, pH, and other environmental factors. It also contains subunits called capsomeres, and also may contain spikes made of glycoproteins that are used to stick and penetrate the host cell. The third part is the envelope, which not all viruses have. It is a loose and flexible membrane that surrounds the nucleic acid and capsid. They're specific to each virus, and it contributes to the infectivity of the virus itself. So the nucleic acids can look like this, or they can be circular, like this. And so that's the nucleic acid part. And then this red is like the capsid. This is the capsid. And the last part is the envelope. Oh, yeah, capsid has spikes. And then some, but not all, have an envelope. And then some envelopes can have spikes as well. So, some more terminology. The nucleocapsid is just the nucleic acid and the capsid put together. This virus would be considered naked because there is no envelope, and then the other one would be considered an enveloped virus. And a completely assembled and infectious virus outside of the host cell, not infecting it yet, is called a virion. Viruses have three main shapes. First one is helical, which is like a tightly round coil or corkscrew. An example example would be the tobacco mosaic virus. The second one would be icosahedral. This shape has 20 triangular faces, kind of like a diamond, and 12 corners. An example of that would be herpes simplex and poliovirus. The third one is a complex shape, which is a combination of helical and icosahedral. They can look like bricks and have filamentous fibers, such as bacteriophages and the smallpox virus. And the shape of the virus is determined by the symmetry of the nucleocapsid, so the nucleocapsid, the blue and the red together. The infectivity of a virus depends on a virus's host range and tissue tropism. Host range is the range at which a virus, or the range of organisms at which a virus can infect. It's based on the capsid structure, and it's mostly narrow, such as smallpox infects humans, the tobacco mosaic virus infects plants. Tissue tropism is the attraction and specificity of a virus that limits the virus to only infect certain cell types or certain tissues. Is based on the specific receptors on your specific cell types, which is kind of what we learned in physio. And so the virus will have a complementary protein specific to that receptor. Examples would be hepatitis only infects liver cells, HIV infects the helper T cells, and rabies tends to affect your nervous system cells. Lastly, viruses are classified mainly by the type of nucleic acid. So there are DNA viruses and RNA viruses. DNA viruses are mostly larger. They replicate, when they enter the host cell, they replicate in the nucleus, and they're mostly double-stranded. RNA viruses are smaller. They are mostly single-stranded. They tend to replicate and assemble inside the cytoplasm instead of the nucleus. There are two types of RNA viruses. There are positive strand viruses. Positive strand already can serve as messenger RNA once it enters the cell. And negative strand RNA, they are complementary strands, and they have to first be transcribed before replicating.
So there are a few classifications for viruses, and there's two broad ones. Basically, there's genome and strand type. Basically, the classifications could be single strand or double strand, or single strand RNA, single strand DNA, or double strand RNA, or double strand DNA. And there are a few replications for viruses. The bacteriophages undergo either lymphatic cycles or lysogenic cycles. A lymphatic cycle is a process by which a bacterial virus replicates within a host cell and ultimately destroys the host cell. A lysogenic cycle is the event of a bacterial infection that results in an integration of DNA into the bacterial chromosome. Many DNA chromosomes can incorporate their viral DNA within the host cell nucleus or as a provirus.
Some viruses are associated with human tumors and cancers. Tumor formations is a complex condition in which cells multiply without control and possibly develop into cancers. A series of changes must occur to a healthy cell before it can become a tumor or cancer cell. How can such a mass of cells bring illness and misery to the body? By their sheer numbers, cancer cells invade and erode local tissues, interrupt normal functions, and choke organs to death by robbing them of vital nutrients. There are at least 7 carcinogenic viruses known to cause human tumors. Many of these tumors may develop into cancer. Viruses may bring about tumors by converting protocogens into oncogenes. If such genes are carried into a virus, they are called viral oncogenes. A few examples of them are in the DNA, human papillomavirus, which is an HPV. They encode genes that inactivate cell growth regulatory proteins, and the associated cancer can be cervical, penile, and oropharyngeal cancer. In RNA, hepatitis C virus HCV chromosomal aberrations, including enhanced chromosomal breaks and sister chromatid exchanges, and their associated cancer is HCV is liver cancer.
There are two ways a virus can emerge. One way is genetic recombination, which is the process of bringing together different segments of DNA. An example would be influenza, which came from swine flu, which originally came from the avian flu virus. Another way a virus can emerge is through mutation, which is an alteration of second force driving evolution. There are three hypothesis processes for the origin of viruses. The first one is regressive evolution hypothesis, which is derived from small cells that function as intracellular parasites. Then there is cellular origins, which comes from DNA and RNA, and macromolecules that have escaped by its origin. And then lastly, the co-evolution, which arose from the cellular life and then becomes into a parasite, and it seals its cellular components through new life forms. And then there are two virus-like agents. The first one is viroids, are infection particles made of RNA. They originate in introns. They lack protein and capsid, but can replicate itself. Lastly, the last-like agent is prions, which are infectious particles made of protein. It can cause numerous amount of animal disease, which include mad cow disease in cattle, and ECJD, which is dementia.
Are there any questions?
What are the two cycles bacteriophages go through?
They go through the lytic cycle and the lysogenic cycle.
What are the three viral shapes and what are their viral structures determine that shape?
Okay, so there are three main shapes of viruses that are determined by the symmetry of the nucleotides. Not a racist. So the first one is helical. It looks like this. So pretend this is the capsid and the DNA is on the inside. This is a helical. The icosahedral, I'm not going to draw out 20 triangle faces, but it kind of like this. Icosahedral. And a complex virus is a combination of things. So I'll draw, for example, a bacteriophage will have, that's the icosahedral head. And then it'll have like a neck, and then it'll have a helical, and like this, and then filaments, like that.
Okay, I will be talking about the viral infection of the upper respiratory tract. There are two kinds of infections: the common cold and laryngitis. The first one, the two causal agents for the common cold are rhinoviruses and adenoviruses. For the rhinoviruses, they are transmitted from air droplets and by contact of infected person and contaminated objects. The signs and symptoms of the common cold are the sneezing, sore throat, runny noses, stuffy noses, and a hacking cough. The treatment for the common cold is pain relievers and decongestant, and your prevention is good hand washing. For the laryngitis, it's a respiratory, from respiratory droplets. The causative agents are cold viruses. Signs and symptoms for laryngitis is hoarseness of the voice. Your prevention is drinking plenty of water.
So for the lower respiratory tract, this is transmitted by airborne respiratory droplets. Influenza is a highly communicable acute respiratory infection. This is viral and belongs to the Archaeopterygidae family. And its influenza A strikes every year and causes most flu epidemics. It circulates in animals, birds, pigs, and humans. Example, swine flu. It was a global epidemic in 2009 and 2010. It's divided into two subtypes based on H and N, surface of glycoprotein. There are 15 known H subtypes and 19 different N subtypes. In influenza B, this strikes every year but less widespread than type A, only in humans and has no subtypes. Each year, the flu vaccine is a mixture of A and B subtypes and changes. Influenza C is mild respiratory illness, but not epidemic. There's different seasonal flu based on the changes to the H and N spike protein. The strain can come quite mild, or in other years more dangerous, like the Spanish flu.
Good morning, everybody. I'll be starting off our viral infections of the skin. To date, 6 orders are recognized that comprise of 87 families, each ending in viridae. Sorry. I'm discussing herpes viridae only. Herpes viridae, and then you can see the diagram up there, consists of several genera. 8 known species that infect humans. It affects 90% of Americans between the age of 18 and 50 years old. It's contacted from sex, human-to-human contact, mother to infant, as well as airborne droplets. Because all herpes viruses are large virions with a non-segmented, double-strand DNA, they have an envelope with spikes, as table 5 was talking about. It is an icosahedral. And herpes simplex virus, these are some of the family. And herpes simplex viruses have 2 types, type 1 and 2. Type 1 is common cold sores, as well as what they call fever blisters, contacted through kissing. And there is no cure for any of these viruses. There are treatments like acyclovir, Arifa, things like that. Herpes simplex type 2 is genital herpes. It's a common STD, contacted through sex. The varicella zoster virus is your shingles. It is the same virus that causes chickenpox, so everyone carries it. It's latent, becomes dormant in your bodies, and during times of stress or even sores or wounds, it can come up. It follows the path of the nerves, so it's blisters and a lot of shooting pains. The HHV6 is the human herpes virus 6, contacted with via respiratory secretions or saliva. It's also more common in persons who had a type of transfusion, not blood, but like organ. The EBV virus are oncogenic, so it causes cancer like Kaposi sarcoma. It also has the virus HHV8, and virus enters the sensory neurons and becomes latent after the original primary stage and becomes latent in the nearby sensory ganglia. This is lysogenic phase, as table 5 mentioned to us. And that's about it for that. Talk about the second portion of our skin.
Now we're talking about the viral diseases of the skin. 5 common viral diseases are rubella, measles, also known as the German measles. Cause of these viruses are yellow virus. You tend to get fever, pale skin rash, spreads from the body into the trunk. Transmission is droplet contact. Treatment is supportive care, medicine. Preventing is the MMR vaccine. There's also mumps caused by mump virus. You get swollen and painful at the paranoid glands, pain in chewing and swallowing. Transmission is from person to person in infected saliva. Treatment as well as supportive care. And prevention is MMR vaccine. The fifth disease, that's what it's called, is causing agent is Fervovirus 19. It creates macular rash on cheeks and ears. It's transmitted directly or indirect contact. Supportive hygiene helps treat it, and it's prevented by practicing good hygiene. Warts, regular warts are caused by HPV type 1 through 4. It's usually white or pink skin growth on hands or feet. Transmission is also direct or indirect contact, treated by freezing or minor surgery, and it's prevented by practicing proper care.
So the general warts that he talked about, I'm going to talk about the genital warts, cervical penile cancer, smallpox, and molluscum contagiosum. So genital warts is known as condylomata. It's type 6 and 11. It's transmitted through sexual contact. That's why it's so important to wear condoms and protect yourself. This strand of HPV is associated with cervical cancer. This also could be transmitted through newborn delivery. The symptoms are small, flat flesh color bumps. And if it's not treated, it's pretty life-threatening. There's no cure because it remains dormant and latent. So just be really careful. The next one I'm going to talk about is cervical cancer. That one is actually 100% preventable if you're the age between 9 and 26. If you guys heard about the Gardasil shot, it's super important to get it. That pretty much gives you a guarantee of not having cervical cancer if you're the age between 9 and 26. So you should go get that. To have regular checks of Pap smear to see if you have any abnormalities. This is type 16 and 18. The symptoms show vaginal bleeding, pelvic pain, and it's transmitted through oral, vaginal, and anal sex with someone who has HPV. Smallpox, on the other hand, is caused by, which is a brick-shaped, double-stranded DNA virus of the Poxviridae. It's highly contagious and even sometimes fatal. This vaccination has been the greatest medical and social advances because it was the first attempt to control diseases on a national scale. It looks pink and red, appears on the base and the trunk, and it's fluid-filled vesicles and becomes pustules, which breaks open and emits pus. The last one I'll be talking about is the molluscum contagiosum. It's very mildly contagious. It looks like a wart-like lesion. It's contacted through skin contact and sexual contact, so to prevent yourself from ever getting it is to practice safe sex or just don't touch anyone with any warts. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Stay safe. Yeah.
Any questions?
Okay.
What is your
your virus family name?
It's called a Viridae. Any other questions?
Thank you. This is a class of microbiology 9875. Fall 2015, we are doing certain activity in class. Especially we have about 28 students in class, and all of them participate. It's a very beautiful approach. The topic says student-centered learning approach. And instead of I teach you, you teach yourself. That is appreciable. And then the questions which you are asking also very important that they may understand it, why they are in doubt of understanding something. So in left and right, I have two sisters who are going to accompany and then as a judge, anyone who wants a question when he is or she is asking, they screen out and then point to the presenters. Mr. Williams also with us, but he is at the back. What I'm saying finally is this is October 29, 2015. Microbiology student fall 2015 are doing this activity for the first time in my class. And then this kind of activity will continue in the evening, students, and then in the future also. I appreciate you for your participation, and then really how you are coordinated, it makes me very happy. This is microbiology teacher, Iyo Bala. Thank you.